20 actresses who filmed boundary-pushing scenes in cinema history. Throughout cinema history, brave performances have pushed artistic boundaries and challenged audience expectations. From the earliest days of film to the modern era, actresses have taken professional risks that changed how stories could be told on screen. Today, we're examining 30 groundbreaking performances where actresses demonstrated exceptional courage and commitment to their craft by filming scenes that were considered shocking or provocative for their time. Join us as we explore 30 watershed performances that challenged conventions, advanced the art of filmmaking, and demonstrated the power of cinema to confront difficult subjects with honesty and artistic integrity. These aren't just provocative moments, they're landmark performances that help define what was possible in the medium of film. Now let's examine 30 significant performances where talented actresses pushed conventional boundaries to create memorable, influential work that expanded the possibilities of cinematic storytelling. 1. Hedy Lamarr in Ecstasy. A young Hedy Lamarr, then Hedy Kiesler, starred in the Czechoslovakian film Ecstasy, which featured what is widely considered the first depiction of female sexual pleasure in mainstream cinema. The scene showed Lamarr's character experiencing ecstasy, with close-ups of her face conveying emotion through expression rather than explicit imagery, a revolutionary approach for 1933. The film also included brief nudity when Lamarr's character went swimming, causing an international sensation. Pope Pius XI denounced the film, and it was banned in numerous countries, including the United States. When Lamarr later signed with MGM, the studio tried unsuccessfully to buy and destroy all copies of Ecstasy to protect her newly crafted Hollywood image. What makes Lamarr's performance truly groundbreaking wasn't just the physical exposure, but the film's unprecedented focus on female desire and satisfaction, a perspective almost entirely absent from cinema at that time. As film historian Kevin Brownlow noted, Ecstasy was the first film to present sex from a woman's point of view. Lamarr would later express mixed feelings about the film, acknowledging its artistic merit while regretting how it overshadowed her other work, including her groundbreaking contributions to wireless technology that helped develop Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Her performance in Ecstasy represents an early example of the double-edged nature of boundary-pushing scenes, artistically significant but often reductively viewed through the lens of controversy rather than craft. 2. Maria Schneider in Last Tango in Paris. Bernardo Bertolucci's Last Tango in Paris featured 19-year-old Maria Schneider opposite Marlon Brando in a performance that became infamous for its explicit content, particularly a scene involving butter as an impromptu lubricant. While the film was acclaimed by critics like Pauline Kael, who compared its premiere to the debut of Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, the controversy surrounding it overshadowed both the film's artistic merits and Schneider's performance. Decades later, Schneider revealed that she felt a little assaulted during filming, as Bertolucci and Brando had planned the butter element without informing her in advance. While the actual act was simulated, Schneider's tears in the scene were real, a disturbing case of a director manipulating his actress to capture authentic emotion. This troubling revelation transformed how the film is viewed today, raising important questions about consent, power dynamics, and the ethics of filmmaking. Schneider, who never filmed another explicit scene, stated in 2007 that she wished she had been better protected on set and had agents or lawyers advocating for her boundaries. The case of Last Tango in Paris serves as a cautionary tale about the fine line between artistic risk-taking and exploitation. While the film itself may have artistic merit, the methods used to create it are now widely considered unethical. Schneider's experience highlights the importance of clear communication, informed consent, and appropriate protections for actors filming sensitive scenes, practices that have thankfully become more standardized in contemporary filmmaking. 3. Jane Fonda in Coming Home. Jane Fonda's performance in Coming Home included a groundbreaking scene that was revolutionary not for explicit imagery, but for its honest depiction of female pleasure. Fonda played Sally Hyde, a woman whose husband is fighting in Vietnam while she falls in love with a paralyzed veteran, Jon Voight. The film features a scene where Voight's character gives Fonda's character her first climax, a frank portrayal of female sexual pleasure rarely seen in mainstream American cinema at that time. What made this scene particularly significant was its focus on female satisfaction and the vulnerability both characters displayed. Rather than presenting sexuality as purely physical or exploitative, director Hal Ashby framed the scene as an intimate, emotional connection between two people. Fonda's performance, capturing both physical pleasure and emotional release, was remarkably authentic for its era. Coming Home won Fonda her second Academy Award for Best Actress, demonstrating that boundary-pushing performances could achieve critical recognition when handled with artistic integrity. Fonda later described the scene as extremely difficult to film, but important for depicting a woman's sexuality in a way that was new. Her willingness to film such a scene, especially as an already established star, helped pave the way for more honest portrayals of female sexuality in mainstream cinema. 4. Isabelle Adjani in Possession. In Andrzej Żuławski's cult horror film Possession, Isabelle Adjani delivered one of cinema's most physically and emotionally demanding performances. The film follows the collapse of a marriage, with Adjani's character experiencing a psychosexual breakdown that manifests in increasingly disturbing ways. The most notorious scene takes place in a subway tunnel, where Adjani performs a 4-minute convulsive fit that culminates in her character experiencing a miscarriage of mysterious fluids. The subway scene required Adjani to contort her body, smash herself against walls, and spill milk and blood while screaming and laughing hysterically. Rather than using a stunt double, Adjani performed the entire sequence herself, pushing her body to extremes rarely seen on film. The scene operates as a metaphor for her character's mental state, while blurring the line between psychological horror and body horror. Adjani later claimed the role took a severe toll on her mental health, stating she needed years to recover from the performance. "I gave everything to that role," she said. "It was as if I was making love with the character, with all the perversity and despair that implies." For her extraordinary commitment, Adjani won Best Actress at both the Cannes Film Festival and the César Awards. Possession demonstrates how boundary-pushing performances can extend beyond explicit content to encompass extreme emotional states and physical expression. Adjani's tour-de-force performance ranks among cinema's most committed and disturbing portrayals of psychological disintegration. 5. Ellen Burstyn in Requiem for a Dream. Darren Aronofsky's harrowing addiction drama Requiem for a Dream features Ellen Burstyn in one of the most devastating performances ever committed to film. As Sarah Goldfarb, a lonely widow who becomes addicted to diet pills, Burstyn underwent a physical and emotional transformation that shocked audiences and earned her an Academy Award nomination. While the film doesn't include sexually explicit content for Burstyn's character, it pushes boundaries through its unflinching portrayal of physical and psychological deterioration. In the film's most disturbing sequences, Sarah experiences terrifying hallucinations as her apartment seems to come alive around her. The infamous refrigerator scene, where Burstyn performs opposite an increasingly threatening hallucination, required her to express extreme terror and mental disintegration. Burstyn, who was 67 during filming, insisted on performing without a stunt double even during physically demanding scenes. She lost a significant amount of weight for the role and wore progressively uncomfortable prosthetics to show her character's decline. "I warned Darren that there was no way I could do a role like this and come out on the other end unchanged," Burstyn later said. "It affected me deeply." Through Sarah, Burstyn created a devastating portrait of isolation and addiction that forces audiences to confront society's marginalization of the elderly. Her courageous performance demonstrates how boundary-pushing work isn't limited to sexual content, but includes any performance that demands exceptional vulnerability and emotional exposure. 6. Charlotte Gainsbourg in Antichrist. Lars von Trier's controversial psychological horror film, Antichrist, featured Charlotte Gainsbourg in perhaps the most physically and emotionally demanding role of her career. Playing a woman consumed by grief after the death of her child, Gainsbourg's character descends into increasingly disturbing behavior while isolated in a cabin with her husband, played by Willem Dafoe. The film's explicit scenes include graphic sexuality, self-harm, and violence that pushed boundaries even by von Trier's provocative standards. Most notoriously, Gainsbourg's character performs an act of genital self-mutilation that shocked audiences at the Cannes Film Festival, where the film premiered. Beyond the physical demands, Gainsbourg had to convey extreme psychological states, ranging from paralyzing grief to maniacal violence. What elevates Gainsbourg's performance above mere shock value is the emotional authenticity she brings to this difficult material. Her portrayal of grief and guilt, transformed into self-destruction, creates a disturbing portrait of how trauma can distort one's relationship with the body. "I didn't judge the character," Gainsbourg later said. "I tried to understand her pain." For her extraordinary commitment, Gainsbourg won the Best Actress award at Cannes. While Antichrist remains deeply divisive among critics and audiences, Gainsbourg's fearless performance exemplifies how boundary-pushing roles can explore the darkest aspects of human psychology. 7. 7. Emily Watson in Breaking the Waves. Emily Watson made one of the most astonishing screen debuts in cinema history with Lars von Trier's Breaking the Waves. As Bess McNeil, a naive young woman in a religious Scottish community who believes she must sleep with other men after her husband is paralyzed in an accident, Watson delivered a performance of extraordinary emotional nakedness that earned her an Academy Award nomination. The film's explicit scenes are presented without exploitation, focusing instead on Bess's psychological state as she performs what she believes are acts of sacrificial love. Watson's face, often filmed in intense close-up, conveys complex emotions of faith, doubt, shame, and devotion. Though the sexual content is explicit, von Trier frames these scenes not for titillation, but as painful stations in Bess's self-destructive martyrdom. What makes Watson's performance truly remarkable is that Breaking the Waves was her first feature film after working exclusively in theater. The film raises difficult questions about faith, sacrifice, and female agency without offering easy answers. Watson's willingness to embrace such challenging material in her debut role demonstrated extraordinary courage and established her immediately as an actress of remarkable range and depth. 8. Maggie Gyllenhaal in Secretary. In Steven Shainberg's dark romantic comedy Secretary, Maggie Gyllenhaal delivered a breakthrough performance that transformed what could have been exploitative material into a nuanced exploration of sexuality, power, and self-discovery. As Lee Holloway, a young woman who enters a BDSM relationship with her boss, James Spader, Gyllenhaal navigated explicit content with remarkable subtlety and emotional intelligence. Secretary was one of the first mainstream American films to portray BDSM relationships in a non-judgmental way, presenting Lee's sexual awakening as a journey towards self-acceptance rather than pathology. The film's explicit scenes include spanking, dominance, submission dynamics, but Gyllenhaal's performance centers on her character's psychological evolution rather than the physical acts themselves. Gyllenhaal later reflected, "I thought if we were going to make a movie about spanking and bondage and submission, let's really do it. Let's not allude to it." This commitment to authenticity helped transform potentially salacious material into a thought-provoking examination of how people find connection and fulfillment through unconventional relationships. 9. Isabelle Huppert in The Piano Teacher. In Michael Haneke's disturbing psychological drama, The Piano Teacher, Isabelle Huppert delivered one of cinema's most unflinching portrayals of sexual repression and self-destruction. As Erica Kohut, a brilliant but deeply damaged piano professor with masochistic urges, Huppert created a character study of extraordinary complexity and disturbing power. The film contains several explicit scenes, including self-mutilation, voyeurism, and sadomasochistic encounters that are presented not for arousal, but as manifestations of Erica's psychological damage. Most controversially, Erica engages in a relationship with a student where she attempts to enact her darkest fantasies, leading to disturbing consequences. Haneke's clinical detached style refuses to sensationalize these moments, instead presenting them as part of a rigorous character study. What makes Huppert's performance truly boundary-pushing is her refusal to make Erica sympathetic or to soften the character's unsettling nature. She embraces Erica's contradictions, her artistic brilliance alongside her emotional cruelty, her sexual boldness alongside her social rigidity, without explanation or apology. 10. Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive. David Lynch's neo-noir masterpiece Mulholland Drive features Naomi Watts in a performance of remarkable range that includes one of cinema's most memorable intimate scenes. As Betty Elm's Diane Selwyn, Watts plays both a wide-eyed, aspiring actress and her darker, jealous alter ego in Lynch's complex narrative about Hollywood dreams and nightmares. The film's most explicit moment occurs between Watts and co-star Laura Herring, with their characters sharing an intimate scene that begins tenderly before taking on a dreamlike, surreal quality characteristic of Lynch's work. What makes this sequence boundary-pushing isn't just its explicit nature, but how it functions within the film's shifting reality. A moment of genuine connection that later transforms into something more complex and disturbing as the film's narrative fractures. Watts's performance requires her to embody two distinct personalities, the optimistic Betty and the bitter, jealous Diane, with the latter ultimately revealed as the real character whose fantasies have constructed much of what we've seen. It was the most incredible gift for an actor, Watts later said about the dual role. I got to play the extreme opposites of a character, the dream and the dreamer. Mulholland Drive demonstrates how boundary-pushing performances can combine explicit content with complex psychological portraiture to create work that resonates on multiple levels simultaneously. 11. Sienna Miller in Factory Girl. In Factory Girl, Sienna Miller took on the challenging role of Edie Sedgwick, Andy Warhol's ill-fated muse who spiraled from socialite to tragic icon through drug addiction and emotional exploitation. Miller's performance required her to capture both Sedgwick's magnetic charisma and her heartbreaking vulnerability, including scenes of explicit content that reflected the sexual liberation and exploitation of the factory scene. The film features several boundary-pushing sequences, including drug use, nudity, and sexual encounters that chronicle Sedgwick's relationships with various men in the art world. Most notably, Miller portrayed the complex dynamic between Sedgwick and a musician character loosely based on Bob Dylan, showing how Sedgwick's search for genuine connection repeatedly led to disappointment and abuse. What makes Miller's performance especially courageous was her commitment to portraying Sedgwick's decline without glamorizing or sanitizing it. She lost significant weight to capture Sedgwick's increasingly gaunt appearance and studied hours of footage to perfect her subject's distinctive speaking patterns and mannerisms. "I was overwhelmed by the responsibility," Miller later said. "She was so damaged and so beautiful." Though Factory Girl received mixed reviews, critics uniformly praised Miller's fearless portrayal. The performance exemplifies how boundary-pushing work can illuminate the human cost of fame and exploitation. 12. Kate Winslet in The Reader. Kate Winslet's Oscar-winning performance in The Reader required her to portray Hannah Schmitz, a former Nazi guard who engages in a sexual relationship with a teenage boy before her past crimes are revealed. The role demanded extraordinary courage, combining explicit, intimate scenes with the moral complexity of humanizing a character complicit in Holocaust atrocities. The film's early sequences feature several explicit scenes between Winslet and David Cross, who was 18 during filming. These moments establish the power dynamic between Hannah and Michael, with Hannah initiating the younger man into sexuality while concealing aspects of her identity, particularly her illiteracy, which later proves central to understanding her actions during the war. What makes Winslet's performance truly boundary-pushing is not just the physical exposure, but her willingness to embody a morally compromised character without either condemning or excusing her. As Winslet explained, "I wasn't playing a bad person, I was playing someone who had no choice to be anything other than a bad person. She was not a monster." The explicit scenes serve the narrative by establishing how Hannah uses physical intimacy as both connection and control, a pattern that contextualizes her later inability to acknowledge her crimes. Through Winslet's nuanced portrayal, the reader explores how ordinary people become complicit in extraordinary evil, using sexuality not for titillation, but as one element in a complex examination of guilt, responsibility, and the human capacity for moral blindness. 13. Nicole Kidman in Eyes Wide Shut. Stanley Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut, features Nicole Kidman in a performance of remarkable psychological complexity. Though she appears in fewer explicit scenes than co-star Tom Cruise, Kidman's portrayal of Alice Harford includes a monologue about sexual fantasy that ranks among cinema's most powerful explorations of female desire and the capacity for betrayal within marriage. The film's most boundary-pushing moment for Kidman comes when her character, under the influence of marijuana, confesses to her husband a sexual fantasy she had about a naval officer, a revelation that shatters her husband's complacency and triggers his jealous journey through a night of sexual temptation. Though the fantasy remains unrealized within the narrative, Kidman's detailed description of her character's desires creates an intimacy more powerful than any explicit physical scene. Kubrick's notoriously perfectionist methods meant Kidman had to perform this emotionally raw monologue dozens of times. "Stanley pushed me in ways I didn't think I could be pushed," Kidman later said. The resulting performance captures both vulnerability and a mysterious emotional reserve, suggesting depths to Alice that her husband has never fully understood. What makes Kidman's performance boundary-pushing is how it challenges conventional portrayals of female sexuality in mainstream cinema. Rather than presenting female desire as something performative for male gratification, Kidman creates a complex portrait of a woman whose inner life remains partially unknowable, even to the husband who believes he possesses her. Through this psychological complexity, Eyes Wide Shut explores how even the most intimate relationships contain elements of mystery and potential betrayal. 14. Chloe Sevigny in The Brown Bunny. Vincent Gallo's experimental road film, The Brown Bunny, generated enormous controversy upon its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, largely due to an explicit scene between director Star Gallo and actress Chloe Sevigny. The scene, which was not simulated, shows Sevigny's character performing acts on Gallo's character in what appears to be a straightforward adult film sequence, until the film's ending reveals that the encounter is actually a grief-stricken hallucination. The scene's context, revealed only afterward, transforms its meaning, suggesting that what initially appears exploitative is actually an expression of loss and guilt. Sevigny, already an established actress with an Oscar nomination for Boys Don't Cry, faced intense media scrutiny and professional consequences for her decision to perform the explicit act on camera. Some industry figures suggested the choice would damage her career irreparably. Sevigny later defended her participation, saying, "I'd experienced the script, the director, and I trusted him. I believed in his vision." She acknowledged the professional risk, but maintained that the decision came from artistic commitment rather than shock value. "I knew people would have strong reactions, but that wasn't the reason to do it or not do it." While The Brown Bunny remains divisive among critics and audiences, Sevigny's willingness to take such an extreme risk for artistic purposes represents a unique example of boundary-pushing performance. Whether one views the film as meaningful art or self-indulgent provocation, Sevigny's commitment to following her artistic instincts, regardless of potential backlash, demonstrates remarkable courage and conviction. 15. Jennifer Jason Leigh in Last Exit to Brooklyn. In the gritty adaptation of Hubert Selby Jr.'s controversial novel Last Exit to Brooklyn, Jennifer Jason Leigh delivered one of cinema's most unflinching portrayals of sexual exploitation as Tralala, a prostitute in 1950s Brooklyn who meets a tragic end. The role required Leigh to film scenes of explicit violence and degradation, culminating in a devastating sequence where her character is gang assaulted, a scene so disturbing that many viewers still find it difficult to watch. What makes Leigh's performance truly boundary-pushing is not just the explicit content, but her character's complex psychology. Tralala is neither purely victim nor purely agent in her own destruction. She manipulates men for profit while being exploited by them, maintaining a hard exterior that gradually cracks as her circumstances deteriorate. Leigh embodies this contradiction with remarkable authenticity, finding humanity in a character that could have been reduced to stereotype. To prepare for the role, Leigh immersed herself in research, interviewing sex workers and exploring the psychological mechanisms that allow people to survive in dehumanizing circumstances. "I wanted to understand her choices without judging them," Leigh explained. This commitment to psychological truth elevates what could have been merely shocking material into a devastating portrait of a woman trapped by both circumstance and her own self-destructive impulses. The film's explicit scenes are presented not for titillation, but as part of a larger examination of urban alienation and societal breakdown. Through Leigh's courageous performance, Last Exit to Brooklyn forces audiences to confront the human cost of exploitation with an honesty rare in mainstream cinema, earning her the best reviews of her career to that point and cementing her reputation as an actress willing to take extraordinary risks for artistic truth. 16. Carrie Fox in Intimacy. Patrice Chéreau's Intimacy broke new ground in mainstream cinema for its unflinching depiction of a sexual relationship devoid of romantic pretense. Carrie Fox stars opposite Mark Rylance as two strangers who meet weekly for anonymous sleeping without exchanging personal information until Rylance's character becomes curious about his partner's life outside their encounters. The film features explicit scenes that were not simulated, making it one of the few non-pornographic films to show authentic sexual acts between professional actors. Fox's willingness to perform these scenes stemmed from her belief in the film's artistic merit and its honest exploration of intimacy and alienation in contemporary life. "The adult scenes were as difficult as they looked," Fox later said, "but they were central to understanding these characters." What makes Fox's performance truly boundary-pushing is how it subverts traditional gender dynamics in film. Her character initially establishes and controls the parameters of the relationship, using the encounters as an escape from her unsatisfying marriage. Rather than being objectified, she expresses agency through sexuality while maintaining emotional distance, an unusual portrayal of female sexuality in cinema. 17. Monica Bellucci in Irreversible. Gaspar Noé's controversial Irreversible features Monica Bellucci in one of cinema's most harrowing and debated scenes, a 9-minute single-take assault sequence shown in unflinching detail. The film, told in reverse chronological order, reveals the aftermath of this brutal attack before showing earlier, happier moments in the character's life, a structure that prevents viewers from experiencing the violence as narratively justified or dramatically satisfying. Bellucci's decision to film this scene required extraordinary courage, particularly given Noé's insistence on an uninterrupted take that would maximize the scene's impact. "I knew it would be difficult to watch," Bellucci later said, "but that was was the point. Sexual violence should be unwatchable. By refusing to cut away or aestheticize the violence, the film forces viewers to confront the stark reality of sexual assault without cinematic cushioning. What elevates Bellucci's performance beyond mere shock value is how it exists within the film's larger structure. Because we see her character's happiness later in the narrative, though earlier chronologically, the violence takes on additional tragic weight. We know exactly what has been destroyed. This context transforms what could have been exploitative into a profound meditation on the fragility of happiness and the irrevocable nature of violence. Irreversible remains deeply divisive among critics and audiences, with some viewing it as a meaningful artistic statement and others as gratuitous provocation. Regardless of one's final assessment, Bellucci's willingness to participate in such challenging material represents a commitment to artistic truth over comfort or conventional expectations, a boundary-pushing choice that forces audiences to confront difficult realities typically sanitized in mainstream cinema. 18. Vera Farmiga in Down to the Bone. Deborah Granick's Down to the Bone features Vera Farmiga in a transformative portrayal of addiction that redefined how substance abuse could be depicted on screen. As Irene, a working-class mother struggling with cocaine addiction, Farmiga created a character study of remarkable authenticity and emotional rawness, far removed from Hollywood's often sensationalized portrayals of drug use. While the film doesn't feature explicit sexual content, it pushes boundaries through its unflinching depiction of addiction and withdrawal. Farmiga lost significant weight to portray a longtime addict and performed scenes of drug use with a clinical realism rarely seen in American cinema. Most boundary-pushing are the sequences showing Irene's withdrawal symptoms and desperate attempts to stay clean while surrounded by triggers and temptation. What makes Farmiga's performance truly groundbreaking is its complete lack of sentimentality or moralization. Unlike many addiction narratives that follow a clear arc of degradation and redemption, Down to the Bone presents recovery as a messy, non-linear process filled with setbacks and small victories. Farmiga embodies this complexity without judgment, finding dignity in Irene's struggles without minimizing their consequences for her and her children. For this fearless portrayal, Farmiga won the Special Jury Prize at Sundance and Best Actress honors from the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. Down to the Bone demonstrates how boundary-pushing performances aren't limited to sexual content, but include any portrayal that challenges conventional cinematic treatment of difficult subjects. Through Farmiga's committed work, the film offers one of cinema's most honest examinations of addiction's everyday reality, far removed from both glamorization and demonization. 19. Elizabeth Shue in Leaving Las Vegas. Mike Figgis's Leaving Las Vegas features Elizabeth Shue in a career-redefining role as Sarah, a Las Vegas prostitute who forms a doomed relationship with an alcoholic, Nicolas Cage, determined to drink himself to death. The film includes explicit scenes showing both Sarah's professional encounters and the complicated dynamic between the two main characters, who agree not to judge each other's self-destructive choices. What makes Shue's performance boundary-pushing isn't just the explicit content, but her refusal to sentimentalize Sarah. Rather than portraying her as either a victim in need of rescue or a prostitute with a heart of gold, Shue creates a complex character whose profession is simply one aspect of her identity. Sarah has agency and clear boundaries, telling Ben, "You can never, never ask me to stop working as a prostitute," a rare acknowledgement of a sex worker's autonomy in mainstream American cinema. The film's most difficult sequence shows Sarah being brutally assaulted by college students who hire her for the night. This scene, while disturbing, serves a narrative purpose by testing the limits of Sarah's independence and leading to her eviction. Shue approached this material with remarkable vulnerability while maintaining her character's essential dignity, regardless of her circumstances. Previously known primarily for lighter roles in films like Adventures in Babysitting and The Karate Kid, Shue's willingness to take on such challenging material represented a significant professional risk. Her commitment earned her an Academy Award nomination and transformed her career, demonstrating how boundary-pushing performances can reveal previously untapped depths in actors willing to embrace difficult material. Through Shue's nuanced work, Leaving Las Vegas explores how connection is possible even between deeply damaged people without offering false hope or easy redemption. 20. Sandrine Bonnaire in À nos amours. In Maurice Pialat's uncompromising coming-of-age drama, À nos amours, 16-year-old Sandrine Bonnaire made one of cinema's most remarkable debuts as Suzanne, a teenager who engages in numerous sexual encounters while struggling to understand her own emotions and desires. The film's explicit content includes multiple adult scenes that are presented not as romantic idealizations, but as realistic portraits of youthful exploration, confusion, confusion, and occasionally exploitation. What makes Bonnair's performance truly boundary-pushing is its psychological complexity. Suzanne uses sex both as escape and as a form of self-expression, yet remains emotionally detached from her partners. Her promiscuity stems not from simple rebellion, but from a deeper emptiness and inability to connect, particularly after her father, played by director Pialat himself, abandons the family. Bonnair captures this contradiction with remarkable authenticity, finding emotional truth in a character whose behavior others might judge harshly. Pialat's documentary-like approach required Bonnair to perform in long, uninterrupted takes with significant improvisation, creating an unusual intimacy and naturalism. He wanted reality, Bonnair later explained. He would sometimes provoke arguments on set that weren't in the script to capture genuine reactions. This method resulted in scenes of startling emotional honesty, particularly in Suzanne's volatile interactions with her family. For this fearless debut, Bonnair won the César Award for Most Promising Actress, launching a distinguished career in French cinema. A Nos Amours demonstrates how boundary-pushing performances can illuminate adolescent female sexuality, a subject often either sentimentalized or demonized in cinema, with rare honesty and complexity. Through Bonnair's unaffected, instinctive performance, the film offers one of cinema's most truthful portrayals of the confusion and contradiction of teenage experience. If you found this exploration of cinema's most courageous performances enlightening, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more examinations of film history's most significant moments and performances. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these performances most surprised or impressed you? Are there other boundary-pushing performances you think deserve recognition? Your engagement helps us continue creating thoughtful content about cinema's rich artistic heritage. Until next time, remember that true artistic courage isn't measured by explicit content alone, but by the honesty, integrity, and purpose with which challenging material is presented. Thank you for joining us on this journey through some of cinema's most fearless performances, and we'll see you in our next video.